Watch. In a crowded bar, every camera working, one entrance, one exit. And yet, a man vanished. He rode the escalator up, walked into the venue, and was never seen leaving. Not through the door, not through ventilation, not on any of the dozens of cameras. He didn't go home, didn't get into a car, didn't use his phone or his bank card. He simply disappeared. What could happen in a place where everything is recorded and nothing was captured? Did someone help him vanish, or did he never leave the building at all? And if it was an accident, where is the body? This is not just a disappearance, it's a paradox. The story of Brian Shaffer is one of the most baffling in modern America. The closer one looks, the less sense it makes. April 1st, 2006. Columbus, Ohio. It was a Saturday. 27-year-old Brian Shaffer woke up with ordinary plans for a student night out. A second-year med student at the Ohio State University College of Medicine, he was preparing for spring break and an upcoming trip to Miami with his girlfriend, Alexis Wagoner. The day was calm. Brian met his father, Randy. They had lunch and talked about vacation plans. His dad remembered him looking well, upbeat, optimistic. Spring break was ahead, a welcome pause from classes. That evening, Brian planned to meet friends near campus. Dinner, a few beers, time to unwind before the holiday week. No one imagined that an ordinary student night would become the opening chapter of one of America's strangest disappearances. Around 9 in the evening, Brian met his best friend, Clint Florence, and their friend, Meredith Reed. They ate, then headed to the Ugly Tuna Saloon, a popular student bar inside the Gateway Film Center complex. Loud music, cheap drinks, a young crowd. The bar sat on the second floor of the center and drew Ohio State students for its proximity and prices. They arrived at the complex around 10. Security cameras caught their approach. 3 young people riding the escalator to the second floor. Brian wore a light short-sleeved shirt and dark jeans. He looked relaxed, happy. They spent hours inside, beers, small talk, meeting new people, dancing. Witnesses remembered Brian as friendly and outgoing, the kind of guy who could strike up a conversation with anyone. Around midnight, Meredith felt unwell and decided to head home. Brian and Clint stayed. Here is where the mystery begins in earnest. According to Clint's account, around 1:30, they decided to leave. Together they went down to the first floor. Then Brian said he wanted to run back up, maybe to talk to the women they had met earlier. Clint stayed downstairs while Brian rode the escalator back up to the Ugly Tuna. It was 1:55 in the morning. Security cameras recorded Brian moving up the escalator and entering the bar. That is the last verified sighting of Brian Shaffer. Clint waited for about 30 minutes. When Brian didn't reappear, he assumed Brian had left through another exit or gone off with new acquaintances. He didn't search and went home. By Sunday morning, Brian still hadn't come back. Unusual, he normally let people know his plans. His girlfriend, Alexis Wagoner, grew worried when he didn't answer calls. On Monday morning, when it was clear Brian was truly missing, Alexis contacted the police. An investigation began, one that has now stretched for 18 years. Detectives immediately pulled the security footage from the Gateway Film Center complex. What they saw became the core of the paradox. Cameras clearly captured Brian entering the bar at 1:55. On every angle, in every reel, there was no corresponding footage of him leaving the venue. It seemed impossible. The Ugly Tuna Saloon had only one official entrance and exit, the main door under constant camera surveillance. There were no other ways for a patron to leave. And yet, Brian Shaffer was gone. The building's layout deepened the mystery. The bar sat on the second floor. The only way to access it was an escalator covered by security cameras at all times. Inside the bar, there were no alternative exits. Windows were sealed and did not open. Service doors led only to back-of-house corridors within the complex, also locked and monitored. Police studied the floor plans in detail. Every potential path a person might use to slip away unseen was checked. None existed. It was as if Brian Shaffer had dissolved into thin air. Detectives reviewed every camera angle from that night, hours of footage. Other guests are seen entering and leaving throughout the evening, each movement captured cleanly. Brian appears twice, first when he arrives with friends around 9, and again at 1:55 in the morning, riding the escalator back up to the bar. After that moment, he never appears on any recording. Police also pulled feeds from elsewhere in the complex: corridors, service areas, the parking garage. There is no trace of Brian leaving after 1:55. By Monday morning, police secured permission to conduct a full search of the bar. They went methodically, square foot by square foot, including storage rooms, restrooms, the kitchen, looking for any sign something had happened inside. Blood, indications of a struggle, hidden evidence. Nothing. They checked ventilation shafts, drop ceilings, any space a person could conceivably be hidden. Again, nothing. Even tracking dogs brought into the venue failed to pick up a scent leading to an answer. Early on, investigators shaped several lines of inquiry. Accident. Brian could have been injured inside the bar and his body somehow concealed or removed without detection. Voluntary disappearance. He may have planned to start a new life and staged his vanishing. Foul play. Someone in or near the bar harmed Brian and concealed the crime. Camera error. A technical gap might have missed him leaving. Each theory had obvious weaknesses, but there was still hope for a quick breakthrough. By Wednesday, the search moved beyond the complex. Officers canvassed the surrounding area, checked nearby buildings, and spoke to residents. Special attention went to the nearby Olentangy River. Divers searched the riverbed. Nothing. Hospitals within 100 kilometers were contacted in case Brian had suffered head trauma and been admitted under an unknown name. No matches. It was becoming clear this was no ordinary missing person case. By the end of the first week, local media took notice. A student who walked into a bar and never walked out. Initial coverage was cautious, just the facts. But as details emerged about camera coverage and the lack of exits, the story took on a chilling, almost impossible edge. The student who vanished from a bar without a trace would become a headline repeated for years. What do we know for certain? By the end of the first week, investigators had established several indisputable facts. Brian Shaffer entered the Ugly Tuna Saloon at 1:55 in the morning on April 2nd. Security cameras do not show him leaving. The bar had no exits other than the main door. Brian did not return home or contact anyone. He had no clear reason to stage a disappearance. No signs of an incident were found inside the bar. These facts became the foundation of one of the most perplexing disappearances in modern criminology. How can a person enter a place and never leave it? How can a student vanish from a bar with a single, constantly monitored exit? 18 years on, detectives are still searching for answers, without success. Brian R. Shaffer was born on February 14, 1979, in Pickerington, a small suburb of Columbus. He was the elder of 2 children in a middle-class family, to Randy and Nancy Shaffer. From childhood, he was focused and responsible. Good grades, sports, always helping his parents. Friends and teachers remember him as reliable and upbeat, someone who connected easily with others. After high school, Brian enrolled at The Ohio State University as a microbiology major. He dreamed of becoming a physician and worked steadily toward it. In 2000, he earned his bachelor's degree with honors and entered the OSU College of Medicine. By spring 2006, Brian was a second-year medical student, one of the most demanding phases of training. Anatomy, physiology, pathology, long hours in labs and the library. Faculty described him as diligent and capable, not at the very top of the class, but consistently strong, never missing without cause. You could rely on Brian, one professor recalled. He prepared, asked thoughtful questions, helped classmates. His plans were clear: finish med school, match into orthopedic surgery, and begin practice. He was ready to work for a surgeon's career. In 2003, Brian met Alexis Wagoner, a fellow OSU student. They had been together for 3 years, and the relationship was serious. Brian had even bought an engagement ring and planned to propose after spring break. Alexis was studying law, equally career-driven. They complemented each other, ambitious, supportive, and focused on the future. They were the ideal couple, a friend of Alexis recalled. Brian loved her deeply. He hid the ring in his apartment. After the disappearance, his father found it, along with notes about how to propose. Brian was close to his family, especially his father, Randy. They met often, discussed school and life, watched sports. "Brian was my best friend," Randy said later. "We could talk about anything." He also had warm relations with his mother, Nancy, who supported his dream of becoming a doctor, and with his younger sister, Meredith, to whom he was close. The Shaffer family was tight-knit. Like most medical students, Brian lived modestly. The workload made side jobs difficult, so his parents helped, and he used student loans. No significant debts or financial problems. He rented a small apartment near campus, drove a used car, and lived a normal student life, enough for school, housing, and simple downtime. His best friend, Clint Florence, had known him since childhood, same neighborhood, same schools, and the same university. Clint was a year behind in med school. "We were like brothers," Clint said. "We spent our free time together, trusted each other, helped in tough moments." Brian's wider circle included med school friends, study sessions, bars, pickup basketball. Instructors and classmates described him as sociable and friendly. Not the loud leader, but never aloof. Brian kept a healthy routine: regular exercise, no smoking, moderate drinking, mostly beer with friends on weekends. A homebody in the best sense, he preferred time with close people to noisy crowds. He loved reading, films, and video games. He wasn't a risk-taker. He planned, weighed consequences, avoided impulsive decisions. That is precisely why his disappearance stunned those who knew him. By March 2006, Brian was excited for spring break, a long-awaited trip to Miami with Alexis. Tickets bought, hotel booked, a week at the beach to rest, reset, and gather strength for the final push of the semester. He needed the break, Alexis later said. He'd been working so hard and wanted to recharge. After Miami, Brian planned to dive back into school, major exams ahead, a hospital rotation for the summer, preparing for third year. On Saturday, April 1st, he had lunch with his father. They spent several hours together talking about Miami, summer practice, and the road to residency. Brian was in great spirits, Randy Shaffer recalled. He talked about needing rest over break, about summer plans. Nothing seemed unusual. They agreed to meet after Miami. It would be the last time Randy saw his son. That sense of stability is exactly what makes this case so strange. Brian had no reason to disappear. He was succeeding in medical school, close with his family and friends, in a serious relationship, with clear plans for the future and no financial or legal troubles. Those who knew him insist Brian wouldn't just vanish. It wasn't in his character. On Friday, March 31st, Brian sent routine texts to friends and to Alexis, weekend plans, reminders, the usual student chatter. His last message to Alexis that evening read like love and logistics. "See you tomorrow." Nothing hinted at fear, depression, or an exit plan. On Saturday, he messaged friends as they coordinated the night out. The tone was friendly and calm. Police checked Brian's medical records. No serious illnesses, no diagnosed mental health conditions, no medications that might alter behavior. His last doctor's visit was in February, an ordinary checkup. He was physically and mentally healthy. No prior head injuries that might explain amnesia or disorientation. After the disappearance, Brian's bank cards were never used again. No withdrawals, no purchases. If he had planned a new life, he would have needed money, but he left what little he had untouched. His phone went silent shortly after 1:55 on April 2nd, the moment cameras last recorded him at the bar. No calls, no messages, no tower connections. Investigators tried GPS and carrier data without success. Months later, there would be a disputed ring and a ping miles away, ultimately chalked up to a glitch by the carrier. At the time he vanished, Brian was a typical American med student with clear goals. 27 years old, about 5 feet 11, roughly 165 pounds, brown hair, brown eyes. He dressed simply, jeans, shirts, sneakers. That night he wore a light short-sleeved shirt and dark jeans, the outfit seen on camera. The more investigators learned about Brian's life, the more confounding his disappearance became. Why vanish when a vacation with his girlfriend and a hard-won medical career lay straight ahead? Why leave without money, documents, or personal items? And how could he exit a bar without appearing on a single camera? These questions have persisted for 18 years, still unanswered. The South Campus Gateway complex on North High Street was built in the late 1990s as a modern entertainment hub, 3 stories of cinemas, restaurants, bars, and shops serving Ohio State University students. Open plan, expansive atrium, lots of glass and steel. The design would become a key element in Brian's paradox. Visitors entered at street level into a large atrium with escalators to the upper floors. Security cameras covered entrances, escalators, and corridors. The Ugly Tuna Saloon occupied a prominent space on the 2nd floor. Bar counter, dance floor, lounge areas, restrooms and service rooms to the rear, and a small kitchen. Crucially, it had only one public entrance and exit, a wide doorway to the main corridor by the escalator. Windows faced the interior of the complex. They were sealed and did not open. Even a broken window would have meant a dangerous drop. There was also a service corridor and a construction area route not used by patrons, later scrutinized by police, but no footage ever showed Brian leaving through any path. In 2006, the South Campus Gateway surveillance system was considered modern. Cameras covered all key areas: the main entrance, escalators on every level, 2nd floor corridors, the entrance to the Ugly Tuna Saloon, and service zones and exits. Recording was continuous, with image quality sufficient to identify individuals and track movement. Crucially, the single escalator leading to the 2nd floor, where the bar was located, was under constant watch. It was nearly impossible to go up or down unseen. Alternative exits, myth or reality. After Brian disappeared, police examined every conceivable way to leave unnoticed, even the far-fetched. Service doors. The bar had staff-only doors into back-of-house corridors, but they did not lead outside. They connected to other monitored parts of the complex. Ventilation. All vents proved far too small for an adult. Ceiling voids. The plenum between the bar's ceiling and the 3rd floor slab was accessible only through locked hatches with no signs of tampering. Windows, sealed and unopenable. The glass was intact. Even a break would leave a dangerous drop from the 2nd floor. Trash chutes, present elsewhere in the complex, but none ran through the bar, and the shaft dimensions were too narrow for a person. Staff statements helped clarify operations that night. The bar's manager confirmed there was only one public door. Bartenders described closing procedures: last call at 2, doors shut by 2:30, patrons out in an orderly fashion. Security noted no forced removals that night. The crowd left calmly. Employees remembered Brian, not a regular, but acting entirely normal. Chatting, dancing, beer in hand, nothing unusual. Detectives reviewed technical documentation, floor plans, and safety schematics to identify any hidden passageways. Freight elevators, employee access only via keycards, also under watch. Stairwells, emergency stairs existed, but doors were alarmed. Openings would be logged immediately. Mechanical rooms, locked, isolated, and not interconnected as through routes. The technical conclusion was clear. There were no covert paths by which a person could leave the second floor undetected. Based on witness accounts and video, investigators rebuilt the final minutes. At 1:55, cameras show Brian riding the escalator and entering the bar. Steady stride, calm demeanor. From roughly 1:57 to 2:05, witnesses recalled him inside, talking with several people, including the women met earlier that evening. Between 2:06 and 2:15 came the last credible sightings. After that, no one remembered seeing him. By 2:30 closing time, all patrons should have been gone, which means Brian vanished in a window of roughly 24 minutes. Several witnesses insisted they saw Brian after 2 in the morning. Their statements would become key in trying to understand how a man could step into a bar with one door, under cameras, and simply not step out. Amber Miller, a university student, spoke with Brian around 2 in the morning. He seemed a little drunk, but not much. He asked if she wanted to go somewhere else with him. She said she was tired and heading home. Jason Thomas, another patron, reported seeing Brian at the bar counter around 2:05, ordering a last drink. The bartender told him the kitchen was closed, but beer was still being served. The guy took his beer and walked toward the exit. Sarah Wilson claimed she saw Brian near the restrooms around 2:10. He was standing by the wall, on the phone, looking upset or puzzled. These accounts don't contradict one another, but they do raise hard questions. If Brian truly headed for the exit around 2:05, why didn't the cameras capture him? Police mapped potential blind spots in the surveillance system. In theory, if such gaps existed, someone might slip past unseen. Security specialists analyzed every camera's field of view, image quality, and possible failures. The result, blind spots were virtually non-existent. Cameras covered all critical choke points: the bar entrance, the escalator, the corridors. The only theoretical path would require moving tight to the walls in a very specific sequence to avoid lenses for brief stretches, something that would demand precise knowledge of camera placement and would look suspicious. Investigators also tested the technical glitch theory. Perhaps the cameras simply failed at the critical moment. They audited the system for the entire night: continuity, timestamps, image stability. The recordings were continuous, with no gaps, and stable image quality. The system captured plenty of other patrons leaving normally throughout the night. It was working. Another line of inquiry: inside help. Could staff have ushered Brian through back areas or hidden him until morning? Employees were interviewed extensively, with additional checks where needed. No evidence surfaced of collusion, concealment, or assistance. Staff consistently said there was only one public door and nothing unusual occurred. Detectives reviewed original construction plans and consulted builders and architects to rule out undocumented passages. Basements, mechanical floors, and hidden voids were surveyed. No unaccounted spaces or secret corridors were found. By the end of the structural review, the conclusion was stark. Brian Shaffer's disappearance from the Ugly Tuna Saloon should have been physically impossible. A single exit under camera coverage. All alternative routes blocked, locked, or leading to dead ends. The architecture turned the bar into a kind of trap. One way in, one way out, always watched. And yet, Brian vanished from that trap without leaving a trace on video. In subsequent years, the site was scanned with newer tools, ground-penetrating radar, thermal imaging, ultrasonic probes, to locate hidden voids that could conceal remains or undiscovered service spaces. The results were negative. No cavities large enough for a person in the walls, ceilings, or floors. The Ugly Tuna Saloon became a symbol of the impossible crime, a room with one exit recorded by cameras that somehow became a labyrinth with no clear way out. 18 years on, the building's core layout remains the same. The Ugly Tuna Saloon is long closed, the space reused by other venues. And still, no one can explain how Brian Shaffer left that labyrinth without appearing on a single frame of surveillance. The evening of April 1st began as a typical student night. Brian met his closest people, his best friend, Clint Florence, and their friend, Meredith Reed. Clint, a year behind Brian in med school, had known him since childhood. The kind of bond where words weren't necessary. He knew about the proposal plans, the surgical ambitions, everything. Meredith, a psychology student, often joined their nights out and was the one who usually made sure everyone got home safe. They ate dinner at a restaurant near campus. Meredith remembered Brian in high spirits, talking about Miami, joking about burnout, making plans for summer. He looked happy, she recalled later. He missed the beach, the feeling of finally relaxing. They laughed about his plan to get a tan in a week. Over dinner, they had a couple of beers. Nothing unusual, typical student unwinding. After a grueling week of study, Brian was not drunk, not even obviously tipsy. Around 9 in the evening, the trio made a spontaneous choice: head to the Ugly Tuna Saloon. They did not plan to stay all night, just another beer and some dancing. Security cameras recorded their arrival at 9:37. The footage shows 3 young people entering the main doors and moving toward the escalator. Brian walks in the middle, a step behind his friends, light short-sleeved shirt, dark jeans, relaxed, gesturing now and then as he tells a funny story. Meredith later recalled he joked that the bar would be too loud to talk. He always complained about the music in student bars. They rode up to the second floor and stepped into the Ugly Tuna Saloon. A Saturday crowd, students roughly 18 to 25, loud music, cigarette haze, the smell of beer, and fried food. They found space at the bar and ordered beers. Brian chose his usual, a Bud Light. They chatted, watched the dance floor, and commented on the scene. For the first couple of hours, nothing special, Clint said. Just beer and conversation. Brian was himself, cheerful, social, not drunk. Around 11, a few university acquaintances joined them, swelling the group to 7 or 8. They moved to a lounge area with couches and kept the night going. Near midnight, Brian met 2 women, students visiting Columbus for the weekend. One introduced herself as Amber Miller. The other's name was never firmly established. According to Amber, Brian approached near the bar and struck up a conversation. Polite, funny, never pushy. He talked about med school, how demanding it was. He danced with them, bought drinks, joked, by all signs, enjoying the night. Nothing suggested stress, depression, or a desire to disappear. He even mentioned his girlfriend, Amber added, serious relationship, a trip together coming soon. Nothing about his personal life sounded troubled. Around 1 in the morning, Meredith began to feel sick. Too much to drink, waves of nausea and dizziness. I knew I had to go home, she recalled. She told them she would call a cab. Brian offered to walk her out. She declined, not wanting to ruin their night. Brian and Clint saw her to a taxi around 1:15. It was the last time she saw him alive. He hugged me goodbye, Meredith said. Take care. We'll talk Monday. He looked completely normal. After Meredith left, Brian and Clint returned to the bar, about 1:30, and the place was still packed. They rejoined the group, kept talking with Amber and her friend, Brian ordered another beer. By witnesses' count, it was his 5th or 6th of the evening. Brian was buzzed but not drunk, Clint insisted. He could speak clearly, stand steady, make decisions, just looser than usual. Around 1:45, they decided to call it a night. Clint's suggestion: he was tired and wanted home. Brian and Clint rode the escalator down to the first floor, about 1:50. Footage shows them talking at the base of the escalator. "I said I was heading out," Clint recalled. Brian first agreed. They started toward the exit. Then Brian stopped. He wanted to run back up, maybe say goodbye to the women they had met. "Wait, I'll be quick. I'll say goodbye to those girls." Clint stayed below. At 1:55, Brian rode the escalator back to the second floor. The cameras captured it with perfect clarity. That is the final recorded image of Brian Shaffer. Clint waited about half an hour. He stood in the atrium, stepped out to smoke, checked his phone. "I wasn't worried for the first 15 minutes, he said. Figured Brian was talking, maybe dancing. When 30 minutes passed, he grew uneasy. Around 2:25, Clint went back up to find him, but the bar was closing and patrons were streaming out. He asked security about his friend, described Brian. The guard said he did not track individuals. Everyone was leaving. Clint scanned the room, checked the restrooms. No sign of Brian. The complex's surveillance in 2006 was considered solid. A dozen cameras covered entries, escalators, corridors, and service areas. Digital recording at standard definition for the era, with retention for roughly 30 days, and backup power to prevent outages. One camera mattered most, the unit by the second-floor escalator. Its field of view covered the landing in front of the escalator, the doorway to the Ugly Tuna Saloon, part of the corridor toward other venues, and the start of the escalator up to the third floor. The system time-stamped frames to the second. From those recordings, detectives rebuilt a precise timeline. 9:37. Brian enters the complex with Clint and Meredith, smiling, animated. 9:39. The trio rides the escalator to the second floor. Shortly after 9:40, they step into the Ugly Tuna Saloon, leaving camera view. Around 1:15, Brian and Clint escort Meredith to a taxi downstairs. Around 1:17, Brian and Clint return upstairs, then back into the bar. 1:55. Brian and Clint ride down. They talk a few minutes near the escalator. 1:58. Brian rides up alone, the last clear frame of him. In that final shot, Brian ascends with a steady gait, right hand on the rail, left arm relaxed at his side. His face looks calm, perhaps a touch pensive. Light short-sleeved shirt, dark jeans, white sneakers. No bag, no visible stress. At the landing, he turns right and disappears off camera toward the bar's entrance, and from that moment on, he is never seen again. Detectives reviewed every person who left the bar between 1:58 and 2:30, the closing window. In that span, 34 people exited. All were clearly captured on camera, 17 men, 17 women, roughly 18 to 30 years old, dressed typically for a Saturday night. None matched Brian. Police located and interviewed each of the 34. All confirmed they left on their own and noticed nothing unusual. Security experts then dissected potential blind spots on the critical second-floor escalator camera. The goal: could Brian have slipped past unseen? 3 microzones emerged in theory. Zone A, a narrow strip along the wall to the right of the bar entrance, perhaps 2 meters where someone pressed flat, could be briefly obscured. Zone B, a small corner near a column left of the escalator, about 1 square meter of coverage gap. Zone C, distortion at the very edge of the frame due to lens characteristics. But none offered continuous concealment. A person might dodge the lens for seconds, not traverse the full path to the escalator invisibly. To test it, detectives ran an experiment, attempting to move a life-sized mannequin from the bar to the escalator using every blind spot trick. Result, every route was exposed at some point. The mannequin inevitably entered frame. Moreover, such movement looked overtly suspicious, hugging walls, ducking, unnaturally contorting. Engineers audited the footage quality from that night. Lighting sufficient for identification, normal contrast, stable image without artifacts, accurate synchronized timestamps, intact files with no gaps. The system captured numerous other patrons leaving cleanly throughout the period. There was no technical failure to explain Brian's absence from the tapes. Ground floor cameras were analyzed to catch him among descending crowds. They logged all 34 departing patrons, but not Brian. Investigators focused especially on 2:05 to 2:35, the closing rush. Conclusion: Brian did not descend to the first floor after 1:58 that night. All service exits were also checked. Though locked and alarmed, detectives still reviewed their camera coverage. No service door was used that night. Doors remained closed, no alarms triggered. Exterior cameras within 100 meters on nearby buildings, ATMs, gas stations were also scanned to spot Brian if he had reached the street. Negative across the board. He never appeared outside after 1:58. On the morning of April 2nd, Alexis Wagoner woke expecting Brian's call. They planned to meet that day to finalize Miami details. By noon, with no response, she grew anxious. It was unlike him not to check in. At first, she thought he had slept in after a hard week and a late night. By evening, with his phone still silent, she knew something was wrong. She tried calling Clint Florence. He did not pick up, sleeping off the night. By Sunday evening, she had called all mutual friends. No one had seen Brian since Saturday. Meredith Reed confirmed they had been together at the bar, but that she left early. Alexis went to Brian's apartment, door locked, his car in its usual spot, no signs he had come home. Panic set in. Brian did not simply vanish. He was responsible and communicative. Sunday evening, Alexis finally reached Clint. He described the night and Brian's final return to the bar. On Monday morning, April 3rd, Alexis filed a missing person report with Columbus Police. The desk officer was initially cautious. Young adults often drop off the radar for a day or two after a big weekend. But the specifics were troubling. A medical student with a spotless reputation, a planned vacation imminent, silent for over a day. Normally we wait 48 hours for adults, recalled Detective John Hurst, who took the report. But this situation was different. By 10 that morning, a case was opened. Detective Hurst started with the inner circle. First, Clint Florence, the last person to speak with Brian. Clint's account was detailed and consistent. The bar, Meredith's cab, the first floor talk, Brian's decision to go back up. He seemed genuinely worried, Hurst recalled, and he clearly blamed himself for not going back upstairs with Brian. Next was Alexis Wagoner, who provided precise information about Brian's recent week, their plans, finances, and state of mind. Then Meredith Reed, whose statements corroborated Clint's timeline. Police ran the obvious checks. Hospitals within 100 kilometers, no admissions matching Brian. Morgues, no unidentified remains in the prior 3 days. Arrest logs, no Brian. Traffic collisions, no crashes involving him or his vehicle. Every standard query returned negative. On Tuesday, April 4th, detectives obtained a warrant to search Brian's apartment. Brian's father, Randy, provided keys and was present during the search of the apartment. The place was immaculate, bed made, dishes washed, clothes neatly folded. No signs of a hurried departure or struggle. Crucial finds: passport and IDs in place, wallet with cash and cards, the engagement ring for Alexis in the bedroom, Miami flight details on the table, textbooks and notes laid out for upcoming exams. It looked as if Brian fully intended to come back, with everything set for the trip. Bank checks showed no activity after he vanished, no cash withdrawals, no card use. He had roughly $2,000 available, enough to live frugally for a few months. If he had planned to disappear, he would likely have used it. The last transaction was a small grocery purchase on Friday, March 31st, $23. Cell data indicated Brian's phone last connected around 1:57 in the morning on April 2nd, about when he rode the escalator up for the final time. After that, the device went dark. No tower pings, no messages, no calls. A telecom specialist concluded it was either switched off or disabled immediately following his disappearance. On Wednesday, April 5th, detectives finished reviewing surveillance from the Gateway complex, a turning point. The footage showed the impossible. Brian enters the bar and never appears exiting. "I watched it 3 times before I believed it," Detective Hurst later recalled. A person cannot simply vanish from a one-exit venue under cameras. From that moment, the case shifted from a routine missing person to a genuine disappearance mystery. By the end of the first week, additional resources joined: major crimes investigators, video analysis specialists, missing persons experts, and K-9 units. The case received high priority due to the unusual circumstances and growing public attention. Working theories coalesced. Accident inside the bar, with a body somehow removed unnoticed. Voluntary disappearance carefully staged. Foul play by someone in or near the bar. A recording gap or technical miss. Each theory had serious weaknesses, yet all remained on the table. Searches expanded to a 1-kilometer radius. Buildings, lots, dumpsters, and refuse sites, waterways and storm drains, vacant spaces, and construction areas. Dogs worked the vicinity for scent trails. Nothing. Brian's family moved immediately. Randy took leave from work and dedicated himself to the search. Flyers across Columbus, calls to hospitals in neighboring states, interviews with local media. "I couldn't just sit and wait," he said. "This is my son. I had to do everything possible." The family hired a private investigator, former Officer Don Newman, who specialized in missing persons cases. By week's end, local news picked up the story. The first segment presented the bare facts. A med student walked into a bar and did not walk out. Tips began to flow, none verified. Police re-interviewed staff from the Ugly Tuna Saloon. The shift manager remembered Brian as a typical patron: beer, dancing, friendly conversation, nothing unusual. Bartenders confirmed multiple beer orders, the last around 2 in the morning. Security did not recall Brian specifically, but stated that, at close, all patrons were escorted out and the space was checked. Kitchen staff, who worked until about 1:30, reported nothing in back areas. Staff consented to polygraph screenings, with no deception indicated. A technical sweep of the bar and complex followed. Ventilation too narrow for passage, no accessible ceiling voids from the bar, locked service areas without exterior egress, sealed windows with no damage, load-bearing walls without hidden passes. Expert conclusion: there was no way to exit except the main door. From the outset, certain facts defied standard explanations. Brian vanished from a one-exit room. Cameras showed him entering, never leaving. He had no motive to run. No body was found despite exhaustive searches. No ransom. No credible threats. "Within a week we knew this was different," Detective Hurst said. "We were facing something we had not seen." The local department sought federal assistance. Federal analysts in video review and missing person investigations validated the core finding: no recorded exit. Detectives then combed through Brian's social world for possible conflict or motive. Classmates and professors described him positively, without disputes. Neighbors recalled a quiet, courteous young man with no incidents. Former relationships ended amicably years earlier. Everything about his life pointed toward a future he was actively building. By the evening of April 4th, 48 hours in, detectives conceded the standard playbook was failing. Brian was not in a hospital with amnesia, not under arrest out of town, not eloping, not a suicide case born of hidden depression. The usual explanations for a missing adult did not fit. The first 48 hours are critical, Detective Hurst noted. If you don't find the person alive then, odds drop fast. With Brian, we couldn't even find a trace. A long investigation team was formed. 4 detectives under Lieutenant John McGregor, elevated priority, expanded resources. A man vanishing from a one-exit, camera-covered venue demanded an atypical approach. The mystery wasn't yielding, and each day made it darker. Version 1, an accident inside the bar. Perhaps Brian fell, hit his head, lost consciousness, and his body was removed. Panic, liability fears, a cover-up. Against this, a meticulous search found no blood, no struggle, no concealment. Staff cleared polygraphs, and removing a body without cameras catching it was nearly impossible. Police checked dumpster routes within 5 kilometers and searched the landfill. Nothing. Version 2. A voluntary disappearance. Motives considered: medical school stress, fear of commitment, hidden debts, concealed mental health crisis. Against this, no cash withdrawals, no documents taken, no prep of any kind. His behavior in recent weeks showed no spiral. Spring break plans and an engagement ring argued the opposite. Transportation hubs, bus, rail, airports within 300 kilometers showed no ticket in his name, no sightings. Version 3. Foul play. A fight, jealousy, a robbery attempt. Detectives vetted dozens from that night. Background checks, conflict mapping, timeline checks. No evidence of hostility toward Brian. Witnesses described him as friendly, non-confrontational, and uninvolved in arguments. Kidnapping for ransom also lacked any confirming signal. No demands or threats to the family. Version 4. A recording miss. Perhaps cameras failed at the critical moment. Forensics on the system found continuous recording, synchronized timestamps, stable image quality, and clear captures of other patrons leaving. The glitch theory was dropped. Version 5. Collusion. Brian and a staff member orchestrating an exit. This assumed a secret motive and a hidden route. Interviews, records, and technical sweeps turned up no accomplices, no covert path, and no sign of planning on Brian's part. Detectives checked for ties between Brian and the Ugly Tuna Saloon staff, phone records, financials, social links. There were none. He was not a regular and did not personally know employees. Medical explanations were also reviewed: epileptic seizure, stroke, cardiac event, dissociative disorder. His records showed excellent health. No neurological history, no cardiac issues, no diagnosed psychiatric conditions. A sudden episode could, in theory, cause disorientation, but it still did not explain how he evaded cameras. Some specialists suggested a head injury leading to amnesia. People have been found in other cities under assumed names, unable to recall their past. Police distributed Brian's photo to hospitals and shelters up and down the East Coast, checking unidentified patient logs across years. The results were negative. No credible matches appeared. Brian's father, Randy Shaffer, became the driving force behind the search. He left his real estate career and built a sustained campaign for answers. He created a nonprofit, Search for Brian Shaffer, to coordinate private efforts and keep public attention focused. He updated a website, held press conferences, and gave interviews to local and national outlets. Over 18 years, Randy spent more than $100,000 of personal funds on private investigators, expert consultations, media outreach, and rewards. In 2007, the family announced a $100,000 reward for information leading to Brian or explaining his disappearance. The tip line received thousands of calls. Randy traveled across states to meet possible witnesses, forwarded leads to police, and hired local investigators to verify claims. None produced a breakthrough. Most were mistaken identities or attempts to profit from falsehoods. Multiple private investigators, including retired FBI and police, were engaged. The most prominent, Don Newman, re-interviewed witnesses, re-reviewed surveillance, and retested every plausible scenario. His conclusions aligned with the official case. Brian entered the bar and left no trace. No conventional explanation fit the evidence. Private teams also chased alleged sightings in California, Florida, Texas, and New York. All collapsed under scrutiny. Randy understood the importance of public awareness. He appeared on national programs and true crime shows, each segment generating a new wave of tips, none conclusive. He also maintained social media pages to keep the case in the public eye. As months turned into years, tensions with law enforcement grew. Randy argued that key opportunities were missed in the early days and that certain forensic avenues went underexplored. Police countered that the case had received maximum attention and resources, emphasizing its singular difficulty. Randy advanced his own primary theory: foul play, followed by evidence removal. He suspected someone at or near the bar harmed Brian and somehow moved a body through back areas or windows. He commissioned further technical reviews of the videos to hunt for blind spots or timing artifacts. No definitive gaps were found. The disappearance devastated the family. Brian's mother, Nancy, was hospitalized with depression about 6 months after he vanished. The family sought counseling and joined support groups for relatives of the missing. Randy admitted that thoughts of his son never left him. Returning to normal life felt impossible without answers. Over time, the strain worsened relations with investigators as he pressed for renewed efforts, legal oversight, and political pressure. He met regularly with detectives, retained an attorney to ensure transparency, and appealed to state officials for assistance. Several legislators made formal inquiries into the status of the case. Brian's younger sister, Meredith, was deeply affected. She altered her education plans and switched to part-time study to assist in the search. Brian's girlfriend, Alexis Wagoner, struggled for years. She participated intensely at first, but gradually stepped back as time passed. Brian's grandparents died without learning his fate. Randy believed grief over the disappearance hastened their decline. The case fell under Columbus PD's Major Crimes Unit, led by Lieutenant John McGregor, a 25-year veteran. A 4-detective team was assigned, including a video analysis specialist, a forensic expert, and a psychologist. The case received high priority due to the extraordinary circumstances, with federal technical support for video review, database checks, and missing person search methods. In the first week, core procedures were completed. Every reachable witness from that night was interviewed, producing a list of 48 people who interacted with or saw Brian. All cameras in and around the Gateway complex were pulled and reviewed, about 8 hours of footage. A full search of the bar and service areas was conducted. K-9s were deployed. Hospitals, morgues, and detention sites within 200 kilometers were checked. Architecture plans were audited against measurements and instrument surveys of ceilings, basements, and mechanical floors. Conclusion: there was no alternative way out of the bar. The recordings were then analyzed with specialized software, frame-by-frame review from shortly before 2 to 2:30, algorithmic checks for blind spots or desynchronization, and comparisons with other nights for system stability. Federal specialists concurred. Brian did not exit the bar in any ordinary way. All staff underwent deep vetting, interviews about the night's events, criminal history checks, financial screens, polygraph testing where applicable, and phone movement audits. No contradictions or suspicious links were established. Search operations continued for 6 months. Waterways within 50 kilometers were scanned. Abandoned buildings, construction sites, industrial lots, parks, and wooded tracts were swept with volunteers and dogs. City landfills and waste processing facilities were inspected. No result. Psychologists produced a behavioral profile to assess voluntary disappearance likelihood. The portrait was of a stable, goal-oriented young man without impulsive tendencies. Medical records showed no mental health diagnoses. Friends and family reported no signs of depression or suicidal ideation. Conclusion: voluntary disappearance was highly unlikely. Criticism from family and the public focused on potential early missteps. A perceived delay retrieving the full set of recordings, incomplete contact with out-of-town witnesses, not enough external specialists on building video forensics, and allegedly premature dismissal of certain theories. Command staff defended the investigation, stressing the scale of resources, federal collaboration, and the objective uniqueness of the conditions. The case remains open and periodically reassessed when new information surfaces. In 2015, a fresh team re-reviewed the evidence with newer video analysis and forensic tools. Tips are still accepted and checked. Amid all leads, one person drew sustained scrutiny. Brian's best friend that night, Clint Florence, the last known person to speak with him. His testimony underpinned the timeline. Detectives re-interviewed him multiple times, cross-checking alibis and statements. A flashpoint was Clint's refusal to take a polygraph, while most others agreed. His attorney cited stress and the method's reliability limits, emphasizing Clint's cooperation otherwise. Police and family found the refusal troubling. Randy Shaffer publicly urged Clint to take the exam to clear doubt. Investigators considered 4 pathways to potential involvement: concealment of an accident after a dispute or mishap, assisting a planned disappearance for personal reasons, witnessing a crime and withholding information out of fear, direct involvement in foul play. Detectives assessed Clint's behavior the night of the disappearance and days after. His account remained detailed and consistent on retellings. Key movements aligned with available video. He appeared genuinely concerned, took part in early searching, and his post-night alibi was confirmed by independent witnesses. The friendship's history, childhood bond, parallel schooling, shared career plans, showed no financial disputes, romantic rivalry, or other conflict triggers. Message logs revealed no tension between them. Nonetheless, the refusal to take a polygraph fueled online suspicion and family disappointment, and local media revisited the question repeatedly. In the absence of corroborating evidence, however, the inquiry did not establish a chargeable link to Brian's disappearance. Some true crime enthusiasts ran parallel inquiries that centered on Clint's role. Clint's attorney consistently defended his client's right to refuse a polygraph, noting that the test is not fully reliable and can produce false positives. He emphasized that Clint provided full information in voluntary interviews and that declining a polygraph is a lawful choice, not an admission of guilt. Clint remained willing to cooperate in other ways. Brian's family hired private investigators to re-examine Clint's statements for contradictions, screen his connections for potential motives, and assess behavioral indicators of guilt or stress over time. Those inquiries did not uncover evidence linking Clint to Brian's disappearance. Public suspicion and pressure changed Clint Florence's life. He transferred to another medical school, avoided the press and public events tied to the case, and changed his phone number and address due to constant calls. Friends said he became more withdrawn and reluctant to discuss Brian. 18 years later, Clint still declines a polygraph. He practices medicine, has a family, and occasionally gives brief interviews that restate his account, expressing sympathy for Brian's loved ones and regret that he cannot help more, insisting he has shared everything he knows. As Brian's case went public, police and family faced a wave of alleged sightings. In the first 2 years, more than 3,000 tips arrived from across the United States. Each required legwork, out-of-state travel, video pulls, witness interviews. The vast majority were mistaken IDs, young men of similar appearance. The geography of reports spanned the map. In California, a bartender in Los Angeles. In Florida, a man living on the beach. In New York, a subway rider with a changed look. In Texas, a hospital orderly. Every lead was checked, none confirmed. The $100,000 reward drew scammers. Some demanded money up front for exact locations. Others sent photos of lookalikes and wanted payment for coordinates. Still others spun elaborate stories about helping Brian disappear and offered a meeting for a fee. Family and police learned to spot such ploys, but still had to vet each claim. Dozens who claimed paranormal abilities approached the Shaffers, offering visions and messages. That Brian lived under another name, died in an accident, lay in water, was buried in the woods, or suffered amnesia. Some alleged contact with Brian's spirit. In the first years, a desperate Randy Shaffer pursued a few such tips, organizing searches where directed. Not a single prediction proved accurate. With the rise of the Internet, amateur detectives launched their own investigations into Brian's disappearance. On forums and social platforms, theories multiplied, from organized crime connections to the idea that Brian staged his own death, and even paranormal explanations. Some sleuths traveled to Columbus to retrace his steps. Their efforts sometimes interfered with official work, but they also kept public attention focused on the case. Over the years, several individuals falsely confessed to involvement. Most were attention seekers or people struggling with mental illness. One man claimed he killed Brian in a bar fight and hid the body. Another said he helped Brian fake his death and knew where he lives now. A third insisted Brian died in an accident and that he helped dispose of the remains. Each confession collapsed under scrutiny. As technology advanced, new kinds of misinformation appeared. Doctored photos allegedly taken after the disappearance, fake surveillance clips from other cities, forged hospital or arrest records under a different name. Modern image and video tools can produce highly convincing fakes that demand expert analysis before they can be debunked. The constant stream of false leads devastated Brian's family. Every sighting reignited hope for Randy and Nancy Shaffer, and every debunking deepened the pain. The family hired a gatekeeper to filter calls and messages. Psychologists advised limiting responses to unverified tips and relying strictly on confirmed evidence. Some media outlets chased sensational angles. Talk shows invited psychics to solve the case live on air. Documentaries presented unverified theories as established fact. Online magazines ran headlines claiming the mystery was solved based on rumors. This coverage misled the public and complicated the investigation. In response, police and family built a verification system. All tips were logged and assigned case numbers. Witnesses were asked for detailed descriptions. Concrete proof was required: photos, video, documents. Information had to be corroborated by independent sources before any search operation began. Anonymous tips were handled with extra caution. Psychologists attribute the wave of false reports to several forces. A genuine desire to help, leading people to convince themselves they recognized Brian. The lure of attention tied to a high-profile mystery. Financial motives driven by the large reward. Mental health conditions that foster false memories and fantasies. Media influence, where heavy coverage primes suggestible people to remember things that never happened. 18 years on, the volume of false information has dropped but not disappeared. The family still receives periodic sightings. Social media sometimes recirculates old photos as new evidence. Internet forums continue to argue competing theories. Police urge the public to share only verifiable information and warn that knowingly false reports carry consequences. The case taught law enforcement crucial lessons about public communication in high-profile disappearances. Authorities must clearly explain what constitutes credible information, quickly correct false claims before they spread, Shield families from misinformation and treat reward-motivated testimony with caution. Mystification and false hope have become inseparable from Brian Shaffer's story. Proof that big cases attract not only sincere helpers, but also people with questionable motives. The Shaffer family has learned to separate real leads from the noise. It has made the search more painful and more complex. Yet 18 years later, they still hope for reliable, corroborated answers, and they meet every new claim with careful skepticism. Cold facts, hot theories. Which version makes sense to you, and why? Leave a comment.